Let's talk about love, not the kind we see in movies where everything resolves after 2 hours of drama and a passionate kiss. I'm talking about the real, raw, messy love we all long for. The kind we often end up chasing like a mirage in the desert, hoping it will quench a thirst we don't even fully understand. Here's the thing, stop looking for love. I know that might sound like a contradiction. We're told from the moment we're old enough to hear a fairy tale that love is the ultimate goal. But here's the truth they don't tell us: love isn't something you find, it's something you create. Love begins within. And I don't mean that in a cheesy, buy yourself flowers kind of way. I mean deeply, authentically knowing and accepting yourself, the good, the bad, and the things you wish no one would ever see. If you don't love yourself, you're always going to be looking for someone else to fill the gap. But love isn't a gap filler. It's a bridge, and you have to build your half first. We spend so much time chasing the perfect partner, the perfect moment, the perfect relationship. And yet love doesn't follow our timelines or to-do lists. It doesn't care about your dating app swipes or how hard you're trying to manifest it. Love shows up when you stop pretending to be someone you're not and start embracing who you are. And let me remind you of this: you are worthy right now. When we talk about love, the first image that often comes to mind is someone else, a partner, a soulmate, or that ideal person we believe will make us feel complete. But the truth is, love doesn't begin with someone else. It begins within you. Think about it. How can you expect someone to truly love you if you don't love yourself? And I don't mean surface level self-love, like giving yourself compliments or treating yourself to a spa day. Those things are nice, but they're just the tip of the iceberg. I'm talking about the deeper kind of love, the kind that comes from knowing who you are, embracing all of it, and showing up fully, even when it feels uncomfortable or imperfect. Self-love is not about perfection. It's not about fixing every flaw or becoming some idealized version of yourself. In fact, the most authentic love comes when you can sit with your imperfections and still say, I'm enough. That kind of self-acceptance takes courage. It's not easy to look at your mistakes, your fears, and your insecurities and decide to love yourself anyway. But that's where the magic happens. When you truly love yourself, you stop needing validation from others to feel whole. You stop bending over backward to make someone else happy just to gain their approval. Instead, you start setting boundaries, speaking your truth, and showing up authentically. And here's the irony: that's when the right kind of love finds you, when you're not chasing it, but when you're living it. But let's be real, self-love isn't always pretty. It's not all affirmations and feel-good moments. Sometimes it looks like doing the hard work facing your fears, forgiving yourself for past mistakes, and letting go of the stories you've told yourself about not being good enough. It's about meeting yourself where you are, even on the days when you feel like a mess, and saying, I deserve kindness, especially from myself. Loving yourself doesn't mean you think you're better than anyone else. It doesn't mean you ignore the areas where you want to grow. It means you approach yourself with compassion instead of criticism. It means you're patient with yourself as you evolve. And here's the most important part: the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you don't love yourself, you might settle for less than you deserve. You might cling to relationships that aren't healthy because you believe that any love is better than no love. But when you love yourself, you realize that being alone is far better than being with someone who doesn't see your worth. Self-love isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's choosing every single day to treat yourself with the same kindness, respect, and care that you'd offer to someone you love deeply. And when you do that, you create a foundation for love, not just within yourself, but in the relationships you build with others. So start with you, love begins within, and when it does, you'll realize that you've been whole all along. We live in a world that often tells us to chase love, chase success, chase happiness, chase everything, as if we are constantly running after something that is just out of our reach. We hear things like, you need to put yourself out there, or love is something you have to earn. Keep looking and you'll find the one. But what if we've been approaching life and love all wrong? What if the very act of chasing is what keeps us stuck, always running, never fully arriving? Let's pause for a moment and reflect on this. We spend so much of our energy chasing after things that we think will complete us, whether it's the ideal partner, the perfect job, or the dream life. But this chasing comes from a deep-seated belief that we are somehow incomplete, that there's something missing in us, and that we must find it outside ourselves. The truth, though, is that nothing we chase can truly fill the void we feel within. What we often don't realize is that we're already whole, already enough, just as we are. We don't need to run after love or happiness. What we need to do is stop and simply be. Chasing something implies scarcity. It's a belief that what we want is out there somewhere and we have to fight for it, hunt it down, or somehow earn it. But love, real love, isn't something you find by running after it. It's something that finds you when you stop trying so hard and start being. Being means showing up as your true self without pretenses, without the need to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. Being is about authenticity. Imagine for a moment that you stop trying to chase love and instead focus on being love. What does that mean? It means that rather than seeking someone to complete you, you start becoming the kind of person you want to attract. It means cultivating qualities like compassion, kindness, patience, and joy within yourself, not because you expect someone else to notice and reward you for it, but because those qualities make you whole. When you stop chasing, you give up the illusion that love or happiness is something to be hunted down or fought for. Instead, you start living as if you already have everything you need. You start being the person you would want to be with. And paradoxically, when you do this, love often shows up not because you were looking for it, but because you were living in alignment with it all along. This doesn't mean that you stop pursuing goals or that you stop striving for things that are important to you. It means you stop seeking external validation for your worth. It means you stop thinking that your happiness is dependent on anything outside of you, whether it's a person, a job, or a particular situation. You realize that happiness and fulfillment come from the inside. Being is also about being present. When we're constantly chasing, we're always in the future anticipating what's next, what we can get, what we need. But the real richness of life is in the present moment. When we stop chasing and start being, we allow ourselves to truly experience life as it is, without the pressure to make it into something else. We can be present with ourselves and others, appreciating each moment for what it is, not what it could or should be. When we stop chasing, we also stop settling. If you're constantly running after something, you're more likely to settle for whatever comes your way, just to keep moving forward. But when you start being, you stop accepting less than you deserve. You realize that you're worthy of love, respect, and happiness right now, not in some distant future. And when you come from this place of abundance, this place of being enough, just as you are, what you attract is often far greater than anything you could have chased. Chasing keeps us in a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction. We're always on the move, always striving, always thinking that the next step, the next person, or the next achievement will be the answer. But if we take a step back and just be, if we embrace who we are right now as we are, something magical happens. We realize that everything we've been chasing was just a distraction from the fact that we already have everything we need within us. So stop chasing, start being, be present, be authentic. Be the kind of person who radiates the love and energy you want to receive, and watch as the world, in its own time, reflects that back to you in ways you never expected. There's an insidious lie that many of us have been told at some point in our lives, that we are not enough as we are, that we must be something more, do something more, or achieve something more in order to be worthy of love, success, or happiness. This lie suggests that there's a version of ourselves that needs to be fixed before we can have what we truly desire. And so we spend our lives chasing after some ideal version of ourselves, thinking that once we reach it, we will finally be worthy of all the good things we believe we're missing. But here's the truth we so often forget: you are worthy right now. Worthy doesn't mean you have to meet some external standard or jump through a series of hoops to earn it. It's not about being flawless, perfectly put together, or living up to anyone's expectations, especially not your own. Worthiness is intrinsic. It's not something you gain or lose based on what you do, how much you've achieved, or how much you give. It's woven into your very being simply because you exist. So why do so many of us struggle with believing this? Because we've been conditioned to believe that we have to prove ourselves. From a young age, we're taught to earn love, to strive for perfection, and to constantly perform. We're told that being loved is a privilege that comes only after we've met certain conditions, whether that's getting good grades, achieving success, looking a certain way, or being constantly happy and positive. We start to internalize these expectations and fall into the trap of thinking that our worth is tied to our achievements, our appearance, or how much we give to others. But worthiness isn't something you can earn, it's something you simply are. You are worthy because you are human. You are worthy because you exist in this world with all your unique strengths and flaws. Your value is not something that can be quantified or measured. It's inherent in who you are, just as you are in this very moment. When you start to believe that you are worthy right now, everything shifts. Instead of constantly striving to be someone else or to meet some external expectation, you begin to embrace who you are in all your complexity. You stop trying to be perfect and start showing up as yourself with all the messiness and contradictions that make you unique. This shift is powerful because it frees you from the endless cycle of self-doubt, comparison, and the need for validation. It allows you to step into your own life fully without the pressure to earn your worthiness. Worthy right now means that you don't have to wait for the perfect job, the perfect relationship, or the perfect moment to start living fully. Loneliness and solitude are often confused, and it's easy to see why. Both can involve being alone, but the emotional experience behind them is entirely different. Understanding this difference is crucial because it can reshape the way we approach our time alone and our sense of self-worth. Loneliness is a deep sense of isolation, a feeling that something or someone is missing. It comes with the belief that we are disconnected from others, and this disconnection often breeds a sense of sadness, yearning, or emptiness. Loneliness can feel like an ache, a void that we can't seem to fill, no matter how much we try. It's often tied to the need for external validation or connection, and when we feel lonely, we may convince ourselves that the only way to feel better is to find someone or something to fill that gap. The experience of loneliness is also often associated with a feeling of lack. We might tell ourselves that if only we had someone to love, or if only we had more friends, or if only we had a better social life, we wouldn't feel this empty. In these moments, loneliness can become a story we keep telling ourselves, a narrative that reinforces the idea that we are unworthy of connection, that there's something wrong with us because we feel alone. This belief creates a vicious cycle. Loneliness leads us to seek out connection, sometimes in unhealthy or desperate ways. We may settle for relationships that aren't good for us, or we may compromise our own values just to feel a sense of belonging. Loneliness can convince us that we're incomplete without others, that we can't fully be ourselves until we find that missing piece. In contrast, solitude is an intentional state of being alone. It's the absence of others, but without the negative emotional weight that loneliness carries. Solitude isn't something to be feared or avoided, it's something to be embraced. Solitude is a space where we can fully reconnect with ourselves, where we can reflect, recharge, and grow. It's a conscious choice to spend time alone in order to find clarity, purpose, and peace. Unlike loneliness, solitude doesn't come from a place of lack. In solitude, we understand that we are already complete, that we don't need someone else to fill us up. Solitude is rooted in the idea that we can enjoy our own company, that we are enough just as we are. It's not about escaping the world or running away from discomfort. It's about embracing our own presence and using that time to nurture our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. When we're in solitude, we have the opportunity to explore our thoughts and feelings without distractions. It's a time to dig deep, to process emotions, and to become more self-aware. In solitude, we can discover what truly matters to us, what we need, and what brings us peace. It's a time to nourish our creativity and tap into our inner wisdom. Solitude allows us to grow into ourselves, to become more aligned with who we really are, without the noise or influence of others. Solitude also offers us the freedom to make decisions that are aligned with our authentic selves. In the absence of others' opinions or pressures, we can hear our own voice clearly and make choices based on what we truly want, not what we think we should want to please others or to fit into societal expectations. Solitude then is empowering. It gives us the space to reclaim our autonomy and assert our needs. However, solitude isn't always easy. In a world that constantly encourages connection and interaction, being alone can feel uncomfortable at first. We might find ourselves confronting parts of ourselves we've been avoiding, or we might feel the weight of silence. But this discomfort is often where the greatest growth happens. In solitude, we are faced with the reality of who we are without distractions, without the approval or disapproval of others, and this confrontation can be transformative. It's important to recognize that solitude isn't about isolating ourselves from the world or retreating into loneliness. Rather, it's about choosing to spend time alone in a way that allows us to connect more deeply with ourselves and ultimately with others in a more authentic way. When we embrace solitude, we cultivate a sense of peace and wholeness that makes it easier to engage in healthy, meaningful relationships. We no longer seek out others to complete us or validate our worth, because we've already done that work in solitude. The key difference between loneliness and solitude lies in our relationship to ourselves. Loneliness comes from a place of wanting and needing something external to feel complete, while solitude comes from a place of acceptance and self-sufficiency. In solitude, we embrace being alone, not because we feel like something is missing, but because we understand the value of being with ourselves. Solitude allows us to find strength in our own company, to recognize that we are whole even when no one else is around. Loneliness and solitude are two states of being that, while seemingly similar, hold fundamentally different emotional and psychological meanings. Though both involve being alone, the experience of each is distinct and can influence our lives in dramatically different ways. Understanding the difference between loneliness and solitude can help us navigate the complexities of human connection and our own emotional well-being. Loneliness is often felt as a painful emotional state of disconnection. It is the sense that something is missing, that we are cut off from the world or from others. Loneliness is more than just being alone, it's a feeling of isolation and abandonment, a deep yearning for connection. It may arise from external factors such as physical distance from loved ones, the loss of a relationship, or an absence of meaningful social connections. But loneliness can also occur even when surrounded by people. It is the perception that our connections are superficial, that no one truly understands or sees us for who we are. It is the belief that we are unimportant or invisible, even in a crowd. At the heart of loneliness is a profound sense of lack. There is a belief that we are incomplete without others. This idea can make loneliness feel particularly isolating because it convinces us that our worth is contingent on someone else's presence, affection, or approval. In this state, we often feel as though we need external validation in order to be whole. And this can lead to desperation in our search for companionship or intimacy. We might end up in unhealthy relationships, tolerating behavior that doesn't serve us simply because we believe we need others to fulfill us. The emotional pain of loneliness often comes from the belief that there is no other way to feel connected or to be understood, making it harder to embrace being alone as a temporary or even enriching state. We can become trapped in the narrative that loneliness is something to be avoided at all costs. Yet paradoxically, the more we chase connection to fill this void, the more distant and detached we often feel. On the other hand, solitude is the experience of being alone by choice without the negative emotional weight that loneliness brings. Solitude is often seen as a positive, enriching experience, a time to connect with oneself without the distractions or expectations of others. Unlike loneliness, solitude doesn't stem from a sense of lack or yearning for outside connection. Instead, it is rooted in a sense of wholeness and self-sufficiency. When we choose solitude, we choose to be alone not because we feel disconnected or unworthy, but because we recognize the value in being with ourselves. Solitude allows us to step away from the noise and demands of the outside world and reconnect with our inner selves. It offers a space for reflection, creativity, and personal growth. It is in solitude that we can find clarity, discover new insights about ourselves, and tap into our own emotional resources. In solitude, we are not seeking anything from others. We are simply being with our own thoughts, emotions, and needs. There is no sense of emptiness or lack. Instead, there is a fullness in being present with ourselves. Solitude can help us process our emotions, strengthen our sense of identity, and recharge our mental and emotional energy. When we are alone with ourselves, we have the opportunity to truly hear our own voice without external distractions. In solitude, we can reflect on our values, our desires, and our goals in life. We can think more deeply, feel more fully, and experience moments of peace and contentment that we may not be able to access in the busyness of social interaction or daily obligations. It can become a powerful tool for personal growth and self-discovery, allowing us to cultivate self-awareness and a deeper understanding of who we are. However, solitude does not imply complete isolation. It is not about shutting oneself off from the world, nor is it about avoiding relationships or social engagement. Solitude is a conscious choice, a practice that enhances our connection to ourselves. It can even deepen our connections to others as we become more comfortable with ourselves and our needs. When we embrace solitude, we are better equipped to show up authentically in our relationships. We no longer seek validation from others because we have learned to validate ourselves. While loneliness can feel like an overwhelming emotional burden, solitude offers a sense of agency and empowerment. It allows us to create space for ourselves, to live intentionally, and to focus on personal well-being without relying on others to define our worth. Solitude is the practice of being alone without feeling alone. It is the recognition that we are enough, and that being with ourselves is not only acceptable, but nourishing. In fact, the difference between loneliness and solitude often comes down to mindset. Loneliness tends to arise when we view being alone as something negative, something to be feared or avoided. It stems from the belief that we need others to feel validated or complete. Solitude, in contrast, comes from a place of acceptance and self-awareness. It is the acknowledgement that we can be at peace with our own company, and that being alone can be a source of strength and healing. Both loneliness and solitude are natural human experiences. We may encounter both at different points in our lives, but it is important to recognize the choice we have in how we interpret and engage with these experiences. In moments of loneliness, we can gently remind ourselves that our value does not depend on the presence of others and that our feelings are valid. In moments of solitude, we can embrace the opportunity to connect with our own inner world, to find peace in the quiet, and to cultivate a sense of self-sufficiency that enriches our lives and relationships. Loneliness and solitude are powerful experiences, but they come from vastly different places. Loneliness stems from a sense of disconnection and lack, often creating emotional pain and a desperate search for external validation. It convinces us that we are incomplete without others. In contrast, solitude is a conscious choice to be alone. rooted in self-sufficiency and inner peace. It allows us to reconnect with ourselves, fostering personal growth, self-awareness, and emotional healing. The key difference lies in how we approach being alone. Loneliness feels isolating and burdensome, while solitude feels empowering and enriching. Both experiences are natural, but our mindset shapes how we experience them. By embracing solitude as a time for self-reflection and growth, we learn that we are enough just as we are, and that our worth is not dependent on external validation. In this way, solitude can deepen our relationships and our connection to ourselves.